Hey everyone, Gary Simon of Corsetro. So today we're going to take a look at what are called variable fonts. So first, let's look at this example right here. We have a headline and a sub-headline right here. And the top one, we have a font here that is thicker and it's also extended. And this one down here looks like an entirely different font. It's condensed and much thinner. The fact that they're different thicknesses and boldness doesn't really mean much, but the fact that this one is extended versus this one being condensed really does lead you to believe that this is perhaps two different fonts, but they're not. They are one single font. So today I'm going to show you exactly how to get up and running with one of these variable fonts, and there's not many at this point, but I really do think that it is the future going forward. All right, so for today's question, how do you stay focused while working? Is there something that you do in terms of maybe just taking a ton of coffee, 5-hour energy, or maybe it doesn't have anything to do with supplement based. Maybe you get up and just walk away for a while. Let us know what you do in the comments here and I'll answer it as well. Also, make sure to subscribe here. Check out the Discord server. It's in the YouTube description, and let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to take a look at here is caniuse.com, and this is going to let us know browser support, at least at the time of recording this video, for variable fonts. And as we can see, it's only at about 69%, but surely that's going to grow. And this obviously means if you're going to use a variable font, then you need to provide a fallback for browsers that don't support it. And we'll talk about that briefly over here in this article at the end. All right, so the next thing I would suggest doing is go to Google and just type variable fonts or how to use variable fonts. Depending on when you're watching this, if you're not watching it the same day I uploaded it or the same week or whatever, there probably is new resources out there. But the two resources that I found for trying to discover and work with variable fonts is v-fonts.com right here, and also axis-praxis.org. All right, so we're just going to take a look at vfonts.com, and as you can see, I mean, there's not many of these fonts available to use because, simply put, this is such new technology. I think you can only load one more page to get access to these, and that's it. So the way this works is we could see over here the name and a preview of the font, and then also we have some sliders here, and each of the sliders are all specific to the font itself. This one has one called Yeast. The hell is that? Well, we can adjust the slider and we can see the values go from 0 to 1000. And it's not just making it bold. Well, I guess it is. It is making it bold. They just chose a different name. And then also something called Gravity, where they actually change drastically the orientation of mainly the white space of the characters here. Again, this is specific just to this font. These other fonts will pretty much all of them have some type of boldness or thickness slider. And notice this one starts from 100 to 700, not 0 to 700. So this is something to keep in mind, and we'll take a look at as we go to integrate our own. And then we have something called contrast, and it doesn't seem to change too much. Something's happening, but it's not too obvious about what that is. Taking a look at another one, and some of these are really crazy. You can actually adjust the amount of italics that are applied to it through a slider from 0 to 1 value. So these are really, really, really cool. Some of them get pretty crazy as well in what they can do. This one's really cool as well. Let me find one of these that are just absolutely, like, take a look at this one. This one has, and by the way, these properties, these sliders, these are called axes. So each one, like, this is a weight axis, this is a width axis. Take a look at this. Very cool. There is even one, if I could find it real quickly. Yeah, it's poop. And look at that. Let me go down to the very bottom just about. Toggle one. I mean, you could just do crazy stuff with some of these. All right. So the one, oh, by the way, also what's important at vfonts.com, it will tell you who created it in licensing. Like for instance, if you want to use this one, which it's only showing one, I don't know why they would include that. It's a paid and commercial, and so it'll let you know if it's open source or not, and it'll give you a link to where you can use this font and download it. Over at Axis Praxis, they have a little bit more options on the side over here. So they have a lot of the same fonts here. We're going to use one called Gingham. All right. And over here, the part to pay attention to here's the axes, as they're called, and it'll show you preview up top. Right here next to the name here, we have this little info icon, and it will let you know, for instance, the resources associated with it. If we just right click this and open that, this is the font page. We could just click download on that. So do that, because we're going to use this one. And if you open it up, you're going to see a true type, a TTF font, and what's called a WAF and a WAF2 font extension. And this is Web Open Font Face, I believe, is the extension acronym. We're going to use this one right here, and it's really a compressed version of the font. But when it comes to variable fonts, you can use this WAF2 here and this true type font as well. Go ahead and just extract this into a new project folder so that we can use it. I'm going to do that here off screen real quickly. All right, so I extracted that into a folder called vfonts in my code and my project folder. All right, and also another thing that's really important to recognize here, at least on accesspraxis.org, when it comes to these fonts, the Axis, it's going to let you know the names right here. Notice in parentheses it gives you the full name, but this is actually a value that we're going to specify for a certain CSS property that will make this all work. And so this is how we're going to adjust the weight. We'll reference WGHT, and then going from these values here as a range. All right, so I'm going to go over here to Visual Studio Code. You can see I have our font file there. That's the only thing I have in the folder. We're going to make an index.html, put the exclamation point, get this increased in size so we can see what's happening, and then also we'll create a, oh, I hate when that happens. Sometimes those icons disappear. We're going to create a main.css, and right here, we're just going to link up our main.css file. And then for our HTML, it's going to be dead simple. We're just going to have an H1. All right, and maximum overload. And then also a paragraph tag. And that's going to be, and this is a sub headline. Okay. So that's it for our index.html file. In our main file, the first thing we'll do is we're going to reference the @font. We're going to create an @fontface rule. So @fontface, we're going to say the font family. We're going to give it a name of Gingham. All right, and then we're going to say source is a URL pointing to the local file in the same folder, and so this is that file right there. And then we're also going to add a format. And the format, if you're going to use a variable font in the form of a like a TTF, then you would use TTF here. And we're just going to put WOFF2 right there, and that's it. Then we're going to reference our HTML element, set the font family to what we specified as the font family up here. So Gingham and sans serif. Like that. And then I'm going to put some padding here just to get things away from the side. All right. And then we're going to reference our H1 element. And this is the main CSS property that really makes everything come together when it comes to variable fonts. It is font variation -settings. All right. This is where we reference and we separate each of those axes by commas. And so if we want to adjust the weight, or WGHT, we'll say 700. And then the width, we'll say 400. So we're basically maxing out both of those values to the upper end of what this particular variable font allows for. Let's set font size at 100 pixels and remove any margin. And then we're going to reference real quickly our P element. And then we'll say same thing. Let's just copy this real quickly. Actually, I meant to make this a span element. Let me go change that real quick. Sorry about that. There we go. All right, and then we're going to change this to 60 real quick, and up here we're going to change both these to 0 and 0 just to show you, the contrast between these settings, even though we're using the same font, thus a variable font. And then we'll just do a text transform real quick, and this will be uppercase. All right. So let's go ahead and get Control B out here and right click and open with live server. Let me close my other live server before I do that. All right, and there we go. As you can see, we just went through the CSS properties. We're only using one font. However, we have a nice kind of very thick, bold, extended type of font appearance right here, an aesthetic. And then down here, we have a nice, thin, condensed font, and this is all one freaking font, which is awesome. And then just to show you the demonstration, it's a demonstration that they used on their website up here. You can actually apply animation to these, using the same old CSS animation properties that you already know. So for instance, let's create a class for animations like animation 1. We'll say animation. We'll name it anim1, 2s infinite, and alternate. And then down here, we'll create keyframes anim1 from, and then we'll take it from here, and then we'll say 2, and we'll say 700, 150, and I think that's good. And then we'll just apply a class of anim1 onto each one of these. Save it, go back, and there we go. And this is just to demonstrate, again, how these are highly customizable. When it comes to other fonts, for instance, if you go to, we'll go there now. We'll go to Google Fonts, and we'll choose a font like, the one I always use, Montserrat. We'll see that if we choose it and customize it, we have all these different font weights, right? But those are only separated by 9 degrees, so 9 different levels. This right here, we could literally get very specific by just changing, for instance, the weight, maybe to 445, for instance. And let's just get rid of this stuff real quick. And we'll see that, it would probably be easier to demonstrate this if I split this, but you will notice the very minute differences in weight just by adjusting these properties. So 445, let's try 485. Look at the maximum overload text. Right when I save this, it becomes slightly, maybe we'll do it 585. So 285. Again, you get the point, hopefully, right now. So now, what about browser fallbacks and all that? I'm not going to get into that into this lesson particularly. I think I'll probably save that for another lesson. But if you're still interested in finding out about this, I'm going to link this article. It's a medium.com article in the description here on YouTube. And then there's a section number 4, provide fonts for incapable browsers down here, and it goes into depth about how you can create these fallbacks that'll use regular non-variable fonts for those particular browsers. All right, so hopefully you learned something new today, and make sure you answer the question here for today, which is, how do you stay focused while working? All right, see you guys soon. Goodbye.